Hello, hello. Here we are again, coming to you from Broadcast Team Alpha on 44 different platforms around the world. And this is the Paranormal World Show under Broadcast Team Alpha's umbrella. My name is Aage, and I'm the host tonight. And we are also transmitting on the Conscious Awakening Network. It's an incredible place. You got to go have a look at that, become a member, because they have close to 50 different shows over there where they're talking about all the stuff that both you and me need to know about. And they have a platform of their own. They cannot be interfered with or censored. Or Google can't get to them, or nobody can get to them. It's all there in-house. And there's some good stuff over there you need to see. And also, if you are watching this on YouTube, that's the place to be because that's where we can also, excuse me, that's where we can monitor the chat room and we can have conversations in there. And you ask questions, and if we know the answer, then we can answer you. If we don't, then we'll tell you. So, and also, I want to tell you how you can get a hold of myself and also my co-host Nori on the Broadcast Team Alpha show. You can go to broadcastteamalpha.com and find the contact feature and send us an email. I'll get the email and I'll send you some whatever you are looking for. I'll see what I can help you out with. And now we're off to the races. We have an incredible fellow with us, with Jacob Cooper. And for those of you that like to surf the internet while you're listening on the guest's website, here it goes. His website is jacoblcooper.com. And go over there. There's a lot of interesting stuff over there you got to see. So, first of all, Jacob is he's a best-selling author of a couple of books, Life After Breath, and also The Vision of Jacob's Ladder. How appropriate, Jacob's Ladder. Okay. And he is on the speaking circuit, and he is been seen on the conferences, shows, and TVs, and radio, podcast, everywhere. He's also a near-death experiencer, the NDE that he had. We're going to hear about that. So maybe it will give us an idea of what is after, because the rumor on the street is that we all are going to get to see that one day. So stay with us on this one because this is going to get interesting. And also, this show is for the deep thinkers out there, the people who want to expand their awareness. And we will hear his personal experience and what is between lifetimes, maybe, because that's an interesting place. And whatever else you need to know, you can also ask us question in the chat room, and we may be able to answer them for you. And isn't it nice to know, or would it nice to be know what it's going to be like when you get there? That's why you need to sit in and listen real close on this one, because chances are that, like I said, the rumor on the street is that we're going to get to see it one day. And I, uh, I guess I will introduce Jacob Cooper. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aage. A pleasure to be on your program here.
Yeah, this is going to be fun, and this is going to be an educational experience for me because I know even near-death experiences, there are many different versions of it. Some of them are different. Some of them see themselves through a tunnel, or somebody just goes straight home. So I would love to hear about you. Give a little background on yourself. How did you get where you are now? Or maybe that near-death experience was a big part of that. But what brought Jacob to where he is today?
Oh, very, that's a interesting place to start. I guess we're all the accumulation of several different, countless lifetimes and lessons and growth and evolutionary degrees that has brought us into current. But as you alluded to in the intro, certainly, my NDE was a big part of, is a big part of who I am in this lifetime, certainly. And, there was certainly a period where I struggled to see this as a blessing. It felt more of a burden than anything else, but that's how kind of gifts work, where, they take time to embrace, but once you see that it is not for you to hold on to, but for you to let go and to share to others, that's when it has its full potentiality and you can embrace a lot more. But a lot of different things factored into who I am today, but it's hard to say my name and not NDE. Those two are hand in hand in this journey, and my goal is that people, after they hear this, they could also remember that they are eternal spiritual beings having
Yeah.
these human experiences, and this life is far from what it seems on the surface. And maybe we could get into how I was informed that epistemology and that awareness.
Yeah. Yeah, those near-death experiences, I get the impression that they are more common than what we would think.
Yeah, it's a good insight. What's beautiful about near-death experiences is there's, research behind them, so people aren't just coming about. The whole term NDE was really developed by Raymond Moody, Dr. Raymond Moody, who researched these things and was able to really give a household name to this phenomenon as well as a set criteria for these things. But around I was mentioning to you prior to the show, roughly based on research, it's about 5 to 10% of the globalized population that has had near-death experience. I'll say that again, 5 to 10%. Now that doesn't seem like a big number when you hear it, but when you think of the billions of people on the planet, that's huge. Combined with this is not this is not calculating rather those who have undisclosed near-death experiences, which I would estimate would cause that number to really be a lot higher than the 5 to 10%. But it's a lot of people who are having these things, and I think now more than ever, there's a licensure and a degree of permission, depending what culture you're in, to share it during these times. And people are understanding that, these things not only change the person themselves, but those who listen and hear it. It's transformative for everyone at hand.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of people that have these experiences and they don't want to talk about it.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
I work in the mental health field, and I understand that when something is very kind of jarring on our system and a shock to our system, it could be overwhelming, or some people may have traditionally people around them who will stigmatize these experience or who will put them down, and they feel a sense of trepidation, whether personally or professionally, to be vulnerable and disclose these things. And so I get it. It's subjectively different from person to person to disclose, but
Yeah.
boy, does it feel good to let out, because you understand that by you sharing it and maybe taking some of the hits, you're making this world a much better place, because
Yeah.
ultimately, all spirituality is the art of remembering who we are.
Yeah.
And people are having a magnetic pull to near-death experiences because there's something oddly familiar about what we're talking about and what we're saying. I think people remember that they are eternal. That's why they're being drawn to this. There's
Yeah.
something familiar about what we're talking about.
You mentioned finding out who we are. I know
Mhm.
that is extremely important, but you also talk about finding our purpose. How, if you're just sliding through life and everything is good in every way, economically and with
Mhm.
friends and family, but there's always something missing. How important, speak to that a little bit. How important is it
Mhm.
for us to really find our purpose that we came here for?
It's pivotal. It's absolutely pivotal. I think what you're describing is a typical midlife crisis when we have a set of prescriptions of, things to do, and it's more of a material trajectory that we're on because all we see ourselves as these bodies. So we want more of these things. Nothing wrong with that. That's why we incarnated, I do believe, to have the physical experience. But when that is the sum totality of all of your momentum and all of your drives, then it becomes part of you hit a wall because there's something that inside of you that's not being addressed, which is the soul. The soul is really here to expand, to evolve, to connect, and to really raise the vibrations around you. It's not all about just taking in material wealth and getting that next job and putting people down so you could get ahead. That's the material ladder. The spiritual ladder that I allude to in my second book, The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder, is really about understanding ascension. We're here to really evolve and ascend. But that's a subjective equation. I think there's uniformity to it where it's really about acts of service and love. I always say you want an expanded experience. You don't have to have an out of body experience to have that. I'll give you something better. Serve someone else. Have a cause. That is the most expansive act that one can do because to me that's the God realization that we all have. Our brothers and sisters keeper here to serve and elevate those around us. That's the most expansive act that one can do. But I
Yeah,
think in terms of finding purpose, I say it's where you start with it is finding your joy. What gets you in alignment with joy? Because, spirit is really about enthusiasm. Enthusiasm comes from that Greek word entheos, which means the divine within.
yeah,
And so when you are connecting to all that you're passionate about, and that's subjectively different, that's each person's path up to the mountain of ascension. And that's different from person to person. But in the end, love is this uniformal
yeah,
energy of it all.
yeah, absolutely. And our perception of it makes a big difference in this too. It can be a good thing if we have a bad perception of it, but maybe we don't like one aspect of it, so we throw out the whole thing, then maybe we're losing out. But I, let me ask you this. You had this near-death experience. Would you talk about, do you feel comfortable talking about that, what happened to you?
Hmm. Sure. This is my fifth time today sharing it on a podcast. So of course, I share it all the time. You know what it is? Aage, I don't know if you ever had this, but when you eventually this came to me, it took some time to get me to this place of understanding. But when you visit a place that's so special, whether that's an actual place or a state of mind, when you're a connected person, you want to take everyone with you on that journey. You don't want to just be there stranded. You want to bring people with you, and that's really, um, very much a Picasso kind of way to live. Pablo Picasso, that artist, the artist, he had that quote that the meaning of life is to find your gift and the purpose of it is to give it away. And to
Yeah.
me, I recognize now these days more than ever that this experience is a gift to be shared, and that's a part of my purpose, making people's lives better. But in the short, I had an NDE 32 years ago in September, so I'm
Oh,
celebrating my 32nd anniversary to give, my own vulnerability away. I'm 35 years old. In April, late April, turning 36. Getting up there. I'm no spring chicken these days. Everyone thinks
you,
I'm so young, but hey, it's just a number. But I tell you what, once you hit your 30s, you got to really have self-care. I can't go around eating the way that I used to, or otherwise I'll break a window with my pants these days.
yeah,
My metabolism ain't what it used to be, but I'm still running and working out and doing the best I can to be of service to others. And so,
that's good.
but I had my experience in a playground out of all places, which we could get into some of the symbolism of the playground, but I was just a 3-year-old boy. I had at the time called pertussis, otherwise known as whooping cough, and I completely suffocated as a result of this condition. All parts of my physical body weren't functioning due to the deprivation of oxygen. The last part that I was aware of in the physical was my brain, and I felt my brain literally crack open, crack in half, due to the suffocation. And once my brain cracked open, that's when I was able to tap into my higher self and my higher mind, and my spirit, really ascended into the tunnel, into the light, where I experienced my own guardian angels, angels that were floating in front of me. I was aware of my soul pod or soul tribe, people that we incarnate with throughout different lifetimes that we're always connected to. On the other side, I was aware of previous lifetimes, the plan that I had before I got here, as well as I was shown premonitions of the work that I'm doing today within my NDE. And so I, and as well as the awareness of the divine, which is to me is the creative centerpiece of all of life itself, or all of love and all of life flows from in its pure form. It's the epicenter of all of life, and that's what I was strongly able to connect to in my NDE and more. So I, was given an option, and this is more the abbreviated version just for viewership. A lot of this is really highlighted a lot more in my books. But I was given, autonomy if I would stay on the other side or, continue my life. And I just said, why am I here? What's my life's purpose? The biggest questions that we have, and why did I come here?
Yeah.
And I was really able to be shown a lot of these images in the work that I'm doing today. And so I agreed that as beautiful as heaven is, like I said before, there is nothing more beautiful than, being your brothers and sisters' keeper and being an acts of service, and to be that gentle reminder to others of
Yeah.
who they really are and why we're here. And that this life is not all that it seems. There is so much more beyond the physical eyes that we're not always aware of. And so with that agreement, I woke up in a hospital bed, and the rest is, kind of history. But it is something that sticks with me each and every day since then, now 30 years. It feels like just yesterday that this happened. It's time is a funny thing, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. There's one thing that people say they remember from those experiences, and that is that phenomenal feeling of love.
hmm
Did you have that?
Times a million, times a billion, times a trillion. I would say the feeling that I had was endless love and endless euphoria. I don't know if you're familiar with euphoria, but it's like the greatest state that you can have. And so I always give this example. We're like bioneurochemical beings. So there always seems to be almost this wall that we hit at our highs in this body sometimes.
Mm.
When I was out of the body and have my near-death experience, there was no possible limitation with how good I felt on the other side and how high I was soaring on a spiritual level. It goes beyond any descriptive language that I have to offer. I cannot possibly articulate how high and how good I felt, when I was in the heavenly realm. It was
Yeah.
remarkable. Something that I yearn for in many ways, but I know we'll be there, one day when the timing is right again.
Yeah. Well, the hopefully it'll be your decision when that day comes.
Whenever that is. And it's a good thing, because I think really most of us, we have different points of our life that are called exit points,
Yeah.
that are involved in the pre-life planning phase, which we could talk about, soon with the life between life stuff that I do. But I do believe we all have exit points. And for me, this near-death experience was certainly an exit point that I had, but I think the soul, in a way, in its higher self, agrees when it's time to live at times. I do
Hmm.
believe that we may not be conscious of that, but in our higher selves, we have that agreement when it's time to leave. And I know that could be hard for people who are left behind in the physical. They could feel a sense of betrayal or abandonment, but I assure you that, love has no death, love knows no death, rather, love has no end. And we belong to the spirit realm. We're forever connected to each other, but we all have jobs from the spirit realm. The spirit realm really dictates and decides and suggests when we are of best service. Sometimes it's being in this physical, sometimes our power is stronger on the other side of the veil.
Yeah. And at the spiritual level of existence, our physical existence here from birth to what we call death only lasts for a very short moment.
hmm
It
Yeah.
is. we and then I saw that because I remember when I chose this
Wow.
life situation here, it was presented to me, and what I had before, it went through so quick. They just took a little moment, and I had reviewed the whole previous lifetime.
Wow. Wow.
So
Yeah.
the the physical, I hate to say this, but it's really no big deal. It is the spiritual that is the big deal.
Right. And I think really finding the spiritual and the physical is why we're here. We are spiritual beings having these human experiences, and
Yeah,
we're able to really find and remember ourselves. Like we weren't born, we were born on this earth, but not from this earth, you know? So certainly, yeah, I think really we're here to really make the mundane the sacred, if you will, and to elevate.
yeah,
I think there's a contrast, light, and dark, and we're really here to illuminate the dark around us and the planet, especially now more than ever. But that spirituality is a participation sport and requires all souls to really engage in this movement. It's not a bystander sport. We all have to really be here and be invigorated and to help each other out.
yeah. You mentioned dark and light.
Hmm.
I talked to quite a few people that have near-death experiences. I never heard one that had a bad one. Bad
Yeah, I
experience.
mean they are out there. It's a term called distressing near-death experiences. And believe it or not, they are around 20% of near-death experiencers roughly. They're called almost hellish or distressing NDEs. There's a lot of different viewpoints. Me personally, my philosophy is I don't think it was a full crossing over experience into the light. I think they were very much in the incubation period and didn't have the full throttle experience of transitioning into the light realm. I've never heard of someone who had these distressing experience who has entered the light realm. They're always separate from it and, not really fully connected. I'm not
Yeah,
going to diminish, what they had is not a near-death experience, but I wouldn't say it's a full representation or full-fledged experience, into the light, if you will. But they
yeah,
do happen. And unfortunately, YouTube algorithms seems to gravitate to these hellish type of things, and it causes a lot of traction and just a lot of misrepresentation of how God operates and the universe operates that almost sees God in the universe through these experiences as evidential proof or justification that God, is a vengeful God and, causes us to really suffer and struggle. I think that's more of a human construct, not a divine,
yeah,
orchestration. But a
yeah,
lot of people they get off on this stuff, particularly in Halloween right now. We're all, it's like everyone, it's like you have someone who has a euphoric near-death experience on the YouTube algorithm, it'll get like 100 views, but someone talks about hell, it's going to get like 10,000. That's just the way we work it, sadly, as a society, we're just drawn to, the negative many times for whatever reason. That seems to stick. Yeah.
yeah. I got a philosophy on that is that chances are that somebody did something so bad in their past. Let's say they murdered someone,
Hmm.
and then they catch religion or become spiritual more, and they know that the preacher telling me because I did, I'm going to go to
Hmm.
hell. If they totally believe that,
Hmm.
they could find themselves in a position that looks like that afterward. But there's a way around that, I think, and there's forgiveness. Forgive yourself and
Sure.
understand what maybe you have done. Try to feel yourself in the person you did it to. I think there's a way around it so you can think yourself out of there or forgive yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, which is a fascinating component about near-death experiences, which usually what people see have nothing, absolutely nothing to do with their prior beliefs or lack thereof. There are people who are traditionally agnostic, atheistics, Muslims, Jews, Christians, Hindus, you name it, and they have these experiences and they're like, wow, I wasn't into Jesus or I wasn't into Buddha or I didn't believe in spirit guides and I'm having all these things. So it shows the universality
Yeah,
that goes beyond our prior belief systems that we are all connected to these higher realms regardless of our cultures or prior religious backgrounds. So that's a cool thing about these things. No matter where you are on the globe, people are reporting very similar encounters, despite some of the nuanced differences in their near-death experiences.
Yeah, and now you're counseling people on this, aren't you?
I am. Well, even, beyond that, I'm training, other mental health providers and
Hmm.
counselors to conceptualize, understand, and integrate this into their practice. I think the quality of how we engage with almost anything is predicated on the quality of our information. And, for a long time within the mental health field, if you were having these spiritual experiences or talking to mediumship, they would label that under a schizophrenic, psychotic break type thing. And as a result, people would be heavily sedated, put in, inpatient units. And, while I'm not going to deny psychosis that is real, that does happen, I do think there's a great deal of misdiagnosed patients throughout God knows how long who are really having these spiritual experiences and they may not know how to integrate them and how to process them. And, a lot of times people are just misdiagnosing these experiences. And I think if someone wants to learn a little bit more about that, I do recommend my friend Suzanne Giesemann on Amazon Prime. She has a documentary based on her book called Wolf's Message that highlights how much, and this is a journey of one individual who was really misunderstood by the mental health system that was having real spiritual experience that they labeled as psychotic experiences,
Hmm.
psychosis. So I'm not going to deny psychosis or, manic episodes. All that is the things that I work with. But I think, I'm trying to give therapists the ability to discern, what might be psychic and what might be psychotic.
Hmm. Yeah, that's the difference. You bet.
There's a dichotomy, right?
Yeah.
So we could only work with the information that we're provided, and it's a beautiful time now when we're able to train therapists, to maybe potentially look at a client a little bit differently than how we were trained or brought up. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I also understand you work with people that has extreme grief.
Acute grief, yeah, absolutely. And I think part of the tie is um, there's a big relationship with belief and grief.
Mm.
We could, of course, be all wrong about this, but I don't think so. But let's say hypothetically, this is all made up stuff. This isn't factual. When we die, nothing happens. I don't think so. But at the very least, people, there's a big relationship with what we believe and how we grieve. And belief does not immunize someone from grief, but allows someone to work through it in a more meaningful way, in a way that's driven towards purpose, and they could open up the possibility of a continual relationship and dynamic with their loved ones. I could certainly understand the morose viewpoint that if you lost a loved one, they're truly lost. And I can understand how difficult of a pill that is to live. I mean, how could you move on knowing something that you love so dearly is no longer there? I don't blame people for, just not wanting to live. But I think when you're able to understand that they had a death of the body, but not a death of the soul in the relationship, there's a licensure for people to not only find that there's life after death, but they're able to find life after their death.
Mhm. I think also that even severe grief is not necessarily negative.
No, there's a lot of stigma to it, and I'm glad you brought that up. It's indeed a hardwired natural processing where we're able to transform our lives from potential heartache into potential meaning and a sense of purpose.
Yeah.
Just as our loved ones are transformed when they pass, so too are we when they're left behind, when we feel like we're left behind. I think a lot of people all of a sudden, when this does happen, not, it happens so often that people start to reevaluate some of these existential questions that they have. And it leads, to a life that's more filled with mindfulness, with wisdom, and looking at the world in a shifted way. So it's transformative, not just for those who cross over, but those who are here on the earth plane in their grief as well.
Yeah, yeah, and especially if you have grief that is filled with the love for the person that
Right.
departed, that love will kind
Mhm.
of gut the negative feeling out so you have actually a positive experience spiritually from it.
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of times deep grief is synonymous with deep love.
Yeah.
And if you're not grieving, it doesn't mean you didn't love, not at all. But, a lot of times that grief is associated with that love because that loss, opens up a void from the love that we had. And once we recognize the love that we have continues, certainly allows people to really progress through their grief in different ways and to
Yeah.
lead to acceptance and then finding meaning of what they were to you, how they lived, and not such a fixation on how they died, but how they lived.
Yeah. And when you have talked to somebody that, let's say, had a spouse die
Mhm.
and then there's the grief, have you heard them that they have had contact with the departed one afterwards?
That's very common. Yeah, it's a great question. I'm a part of an organization that called Helping Parents Heal, and essentially Helping Parents Heal is, a big. We don't call it a grief organization. We call it, people who had their loved ones transition. We call them the shining light, parent or sibling because the light that they have and light that their loved one has are forever intertwined. But this is a beautiful organization for anyone who's seeking evidential angles towards a continuity of life after death and really a supportive environment for those who had their loved ones, cross over. But yes, that is very common for people to have signs, symbols, as well as communication.
Yeah.
I would encourage, though, to really work with and not to bypass your grief to really work with that because I think that's allows people to transform as well as to reevaluate their value systems that they have. And ultimately, once these things happen, they remind us of the fragility of this body in this world, and that could lead to trepidation or it could lead to a greater sense, of purpose in this world and to make the most of each and every moment that we do have.
Yeah. And there is a way they can actually talk to the departed ones. One of them, they can talk to us in dreams, but when they lay down, speak loud and visualize them and
Mhm.
tell themselves, speak to me in my dream,
Yep.
because they have a capability of
Mhm.
interacting with your dream.
Yeah. So
And
true.
another one is an electronic. You can actually talk to them, not face
Mhm.
to face, but in 1901, Nikola Tesla created a radio, which today is called the Tesla Spirit Radio.
Mhm.
Go to YouTube, put in Tesla Spirit Radio and watch the videos on it. There are people, they have it's a cheap little thing. It
Mhm.
costs about probably 20, $25 to put it together. And you can, it isn't plugged into anything. You talk to the machine and the voice physically come back through the machine. So you got to watch those videos because
Yeah.
this is real and it works.
You're talking about like yeah, the spirit boxes. Yeah.
There you go.
I have a colleague of mine who endorsed my second book who's right by you named Dr. Gary Schwartz. I don't know if you know who Dr. Schwartz is. He runs the parapsychology department at the U of A. But he's really working on this project and I have to have an NDA with some of the, details of it, but he's been working on the spirit phone, where people can literally call up their loved one, they're only a phone call away in heaven. And so that's the cool part about, living in these times is technology is so sped up now where we're just able to have that veil that much thinner. We don't have to go into channeling for 10 hours. You could to connect to a loved one, you could simply pick up a phone and call or talk, so that could be interesting. But also if people want more of that objective viewpoint, to really look at someone who's evidentially tested as a medium as a medium that's been
Yeah,
scientifically tested. A lot of people will put up their shingles, stuff like that, and I'd say about 85 to 90% of people are just not evidential who claim to be, and
yeah,
sometimes they overshoot some of their abilities, but to look at organizations like the Forever Family Foundation helping parents heal and their accredited evidential mediums, they'll be able to really It's hard to be a denier after, getting a reading from someone who's really tuned in and gifted.
Yeah.
Some better than others for sure. But yeah,
Yeah, I ran into one of those in Europe before I came to the United States, and she told me pretty
yeah,
much everything that I was doing,
yeah.
and I thought, no, she's full of malarkey. No, no,
Right,
no.
right, 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 right.
But it happened.
Yeah, again, certainly there's Google, there's research, there's social media,
Yeah,
but there are certainly some things that no one knows that come up in these readings. And we have a term for that called NOE, no other explanation, that
yeah,
we're a complete stranger to these people and that they know these things. It goes beyond, this is not something that anyone else knows usually but us. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's it gets interesting out there, and
sure does.
I speak a little more about what you can help people do.
Yeah, so these days I do a lot of hypnotherapy, which to me is a promoted, deepened state of relaxation that allows people to take themselves into the conscious mind and goes into the subconscious mind. I think in reality, it takes people from ordinary states of life of consciousness into this spirit channel, into these non-ordinary states of consciousness. And so what I do is we regress people to the level of a past life. I do, past life regressions, but I go even deeper where we take people into their life between lives, which is really remembering their lives on the other side before they got here. And I think that's really spectacular what I've seen because, um, what are some of the biggest questions that people have is who am I? Why did I come here? Where am I going after this body? And what's my soul's purpose? And between lives, soul regression, clients are able to really go in on a deeper soul level and to find a lot of these answers as they're able to really communicate with their spirit guides or the council of wise beings or elders. They're able to also understand the blueprint of why they came into this body, some of their themes. And, that's very transformative because, you could see life as random chaos or life as intentional or life as somewhere in between. And the between life soul regression really allows people to understand the intentionality behind what they're going through, as well as remembering that life is just not random, that there's an order to what we're going through and to stick with it and to not, kind of give up. Spirit wants us to stick with the plan and to trust that.
Yeah, yeah. There's one thing that hypnotists normally don't think about doing.
Mhm.
Have you ever tried to put somebody in a deep hypnotic state where they may not even hear a thing you're saying, but they just listen subconsciously and take
Mhm.
them forward in time to meet themselves
Mhm.
so that they can maybe get advice from them,
From the
hopefully
future self.
smarter
Yeah.
future self?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly a really cool concept, just going to a different timeline and communicating with that future self. Not something that I've really looked into, but I'll have to like lean into that because that sounds really cool. These days, mostly we try to go to the source,
Yeah.
right? So ultimately the source, no pun intended, but when someone's, struggling with something they've experimented with all modalities and hasn't worked, we try to get people to go to the source. And oftentimes, that's rooted within the higher self or a past life, and they're able to really navigate their situations with a lot more clarity.
Yeah, I'll try to do that sometime. I
That
think,
is that is cool.
yeah,
That's a cool
because
concept.
I know it works because my co-host broadcast on Broadcasting Alpha, Nori, she
Right.
does that.
She does that. Yeah,
Yeah,
well.
and I know it works. So try it sometime. I think you're really,
It's something that I do on a very light level with clients. Like when we're going through something, just gotta ask them like, all right, yourself 5, 10, 15 years from now, you'd say able to see this through a broader view. Like what is that self telling you? Because sometimes we get caught in our problems, it's very hard for us to see through a broad view. And that future self kind of sees things past. We get so attached to the moment to moment stuff that
yeah,
everything passes in this reality. As they say, what is real can never change. What changes isn't really real, you know?
yeah, but it's a little tricky because
Yeah, it's interesting
if
stuff.
you go too far into the future and you find out that, oh, I'm dead. So,
Right.
you gotta watch. take it in stages, and I think you're gonna have fun with something like that if you do it.
Yeah, that's cool. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
I believe we have different timelines and different possibilities. I don't think there's just
yeah.
one path. So I think it reveals like a particular path if things are on a trajectory. But I do believe in multitude of timelines for
Oh,
people.
yes, absolutely. Yep. And
Yeah,
we see that once in a while we have time slippage when we
yeah,
find things are different.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
then you find yourself back again where it was before. So it happens to people.
It does. Yeah,
I got a question for you that is becoming more and more talked about,
sure.
and that is the holographic universe and our simulation that we may be living in. How do you have any thoughts on that?
I have to look more. It's a little bit beyond my awareness. I've heard of it a little bit, but I just can't speak enough on my level to give
Uh,
much contribution as much as I can. I would say that this isn't the only place, certainly. I do believe in other forms of existences, and I don't believe that this is the only plane
oh,
of life, if you will. But that's something that I've heard about. I don't know my level enough to speak very deeply on it.
yeah. Yeah, I know I was listening to several people now. Greg Braden is one of them, and he said
Yeah.
that there is, when you take all the information from this reality, put it into the computer,
Hmm.
and what comes out is that science and what the computer is telling us on the basis of quantum mechanics and other things is that there's a 93% chance that we are living in a computerized holographic simulation.
A fascinating
Yeah,
concept. Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
yeah.
Interesting.
I'm not so interested in that. I'm more interested who is sitting at the computer.
Someone who probably needs a lot of steps if they're sitting all that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think within the physical, who is sitting at the computer, I can probably point to him. It's you.
Yeah. Yeah.
We create our reality around us.
Absolutely. That is certainly, ascribe to. But I think the computer screen, I think we're all kind of glued to that in a
Yeah.
different way these days. Yeah.
Oh boy. Yeah, he gets really deep when you step out of the box.
Greg is just one of the most brilliant minds on the planet. Just like I'm just fascinated by
Yeah.
the man. Just really, I got no words. I mean, the guy's a
Yeah.
genius to me, beyond beyond descriptive language.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't have words. It's like Roger Federer, Michael Jordan, just someone who's really, I don't know, just rare.
Yeah, he
He's
is really sharp.
yeah.
And the thing about it is that he does most of his research himself.
Yeah, no, he's been at it for a long time,
Yeah.
so he's a historian, theologian, a scientist, like he does a lot. I know a couple of people like that. You can just,
Yeah.
you just have to sit back and let them talk and,
Yeah.
hear what they have to say because you're in rare company. You just have to
Yes.
appreciate those moments, when
Absolutely.
genius comes your way.
Absolutely. I got one last question for me before you go.
Sure.
And I didn't tell you beforehand because I wanted it to be fresh.
Yeah.
If you could talk to the whole world and the world is listening, what would you tell them?
Ah, gosh, so many things. Well, stop killing each other, but beyond that, remember who you are. Really that simple. Remembering who you are allows us to remember who we are. That we are not separate, we are interconnected, we are divine. We come from the same place, we go to the same place, and just to not allow these physical bodies to cause separation. Energetically, we're all connected. Quantumly, we're all connected.
Yeah.
Neurologically, we're all connected. And to stop seeing yourself as separate, I would
Yeah.
say. And remember how special you are. Remember how loved you are. That message, it sounds simple, it sounds hallmarky, but if that's applied, that is the most simple, most important message that people really need to hear, that they are loved, they are loved, and they're here to express that which they are.
Thinking like that, we're going to have a wonderful life too.
Yeah. It's like at the end of the day, you squeeze all of life out, all that is left
Yeah.
when all is said and done is love.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
survives all forms of physical death.
Yes, that's right. In fact, I remember Albert Einstein, about a
Yes.
year before he died, he said
Wow.
in an interview that I have studied the universe more than most,
Hmm.
and I found that it's all made from the vibration of love.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's sometimes when you listen to these scientists, they sound like Wayne Dyer, Deepak Chopra, and stuff like that. It's like they're very spiritual, very philosophical, very,
yeah,
very beyond their time. He also said too, the more that I study, the less I know in a way, because there's just such a vast universe that he didn't really know how to conceptualize it all. The more that he knew, the less he was able to really understand,
yeah.
if you will. But he
Mhm.
understood some of the basics. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell people again where they can get a hold of you, what's your website, and also if you have things on YouTube, let them know where they can reach you.
Yeah, people could follow me on my website, jacoblcooper.com. That's jacoblcooper.com. You could also find Life After Breath and the Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder on my website and Amazon and a bunch of other indie stores. I'm on social media, Jacob Cooper LCSW on Instagram, Facebook, and I also have a YouTube channel called The Wisdom of Jacob's Ladder. We're on over 100 episodes, so do subscribe, check that out, and you could also follow me on a radio network called mindbodyspirit.fm.
And now I'm going to talk to the listeners. If you want to go forward in time, get a hold of him and have him help you. I think he will enjoy it probably just as much as you will. So try it out. Okay. And yeah, we're down to the end here. So if you're watching us on YouTube, please subscribe. That'll help us a lot. And then until next time, be good to each other.